This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, good morning. Welcome to your new day. We're following breaking news here. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is under fire. He failed to disclose two separate meetings with Russia's ambassador, the same ambassador that Mike Flynn was meeting with. You know who he is and what happened to him. He was still a senator, Sessions, when he was advising the Trump campaign and had these meetings.
Now, these new revelations contradict answers that Jeff Sessions gave to senators during his confirmation process. Top Democrats are now calling on the Attorney General to resign as more calls grow for him to at least recuse himself about the Russia investigations. We are in day 42 of the Trump presidency, so let's begin our coverage with senior Washington correspondent Joe Johns. He's live at the White House. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Allison. The confirmation hearing of Jeff Sessions was must-see TV as his then colleagues in the Senate got to grill him. He was sworn in 3 weeks ago today as the federal government's top law enforcement officer, and now there are questions about whether he may have made a misleading statement during the hearing about contacts with Russia that could at least potentially have far-reaching consequences. The Justice Department revealing Attorney General Jeff Sessions met with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak twice during President Trump's campaign in 2016. Contact Sessions did not disclose under oath at his Senate confirmation hearing.
I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians. I would just say to you that I have no information about this matter.
Sessions denying any impropriety, releasing a new statement now saying, quote, "I never met with any Russian officials to discuss issues of the campaign. I have no idea what this allegation is about. It is false." But the Justice Department revealing that Sessions met with Kislyak last July on the sidelines of the Republican National Convention.
Make America great again.
4 months after Sessions was named chairman of the Trump campaign's National Security Advisory Committee. Sessions met again with Ambassador Kislyak last September in his Senate office. The White House blasting allegations by leading Democrats that he misled Congress as partisan politics. In a statement saying, quote, "Sessions met with the ambassador in an official capacity as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, which is entirely consistent with his testimony." Sessions spokeswoman says, quote, "There was absolutely nothing misleading about his answer." The denials from Sessions and the White House are in direct conflict with what the Justice Department says happened. Senior government sources tell CNN that Ambassador Kislyak is considered by U.S. intelligence to be one of Russia's top spies in Washington. Last December, U.S. intelligence intercepted conversations between Kislyak and President Trump's former national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Flynn was later fired for misleading the vice president about discussing sanctions with Russia. Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting Obama administration officials scrambled to preserve any information about possible contacts between President Trump's campaign aides and Russia before Mr. Trump took office. The officials quickly spreading information about Russia's efforts to leave a clear trail of intelligence.
I have nothing to do with Russia.
The White House has repeatedly denied any such contact.
At what point, how many people have to say that there's nothing there before you realize there's nothing there?
The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman on Facebook this morning disputing CNN's characterization of Ambassador Kislyak. The timing of this controversy, not good for the White House. The president is headed out to a shipbuilding event in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area to talk about rebuilding the military. Chris and Allison.
All right, Joe, appreciate it. Top Democrats are calling for Attorney General Sessions to resign for failing to disclose those meetings with a Russian diplomat. Some Republicans are insisting that Sessions at least recuse himself from any Russia investigations. CNN's Sunland Sarfati live from Capitol Hill with more. What do we know?
Chris, good morning. Very swift reaction coming from Capitol Hill. Many lawmakers calling for a special prosecutor to be appointed. They say that Senator Sessions needs to recuse himself here as Attorney General, and others going one step farther. A handful of Democrats calling for Sessions to resign, including Nancy Pelosi, who says, quote, "Sessions is not fit to serve as the top law enforcement officer of our country and must resign. There must be an independent, bipartisan outside commission to investigate the Trump political, personal, and financial connections to the Russians. And so far, Sessions is getting little support from Republicans, including his former colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham.
If there is something there and it goes up the chain of investigation, it is clear to me that Jeff Sessions, who is my dear friend, cannot make this decision about Trump. So there may be nothing there, but if there's something there that the FBI believes is criminal in nature, then for sure you need a special prosecutor.
And all this as the House Intelligence Committee was already moving forward with their investigation into all of this, announcing last night the parameters for their probe, which according to the committee will focus on the contacts between Russian officials and campaigns during the election, who leaked here, and the U.S. government's response to the Russian cyber activity. So all of this just adding another layer to an already very complex investigation. Allison?
All right, Sutherland, thank you very much for explaining that. Joining us now to talk about it is Republican Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. He's the chairman of the House Financial Services Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations. Good morning, Congressman.
Allison. Good morning.
Great to have you here.
You too.
So let's talk about this revelation that Attorney General Sessions, when he was senator, met twice with this same Russian ambassador that Michael Flynn, who has resigned, met with, and he didn't disclose it. What do you make of this?
Well, first off, I would tell you that there's a lot of congressmen and senators who meet with leaders of foreign governments and ambassadors, especially on committees like the one that Jeff Sessions served on. But with that said, it gives me some pause that he wasn't more clear about the meeting. I mean, I think as he's going through the campaign with Mr. Trump, though he was acting in his official capacity as a senator, you want to disclose that information, and I think it should have been more clear during his confirmation process that he did have the meetings. But I'm going to take him at face value now that as these meetings took place, I think it was July and September, that they were in his official capacity. He's a U.S. senator. He has a lot of work on his plate. And I think, frankly, at that time, there wasn't a lot of people in America who thought that Donald Trump was going to win. I highly doubt there was a correlation between those meetings and any campaign activity. I do think it was in the senator's capacity as a senator.
And why, Congressman, are you so confident about that? I mean, given that he was pretty unequivocal in his confirmation hearing that there was no communications. Let me just remind our viewers and you exactly how this went down when he was questioned. Listen to this.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
Congressman, he says, I did not have communications with the Russians. Yes, he did. Twice.
Yeah. And that's why I first said that I think he should have been far more clear with the panel. I would note that the question did come to him about the campaign, and sometimes when you're getting a question lobbed at you, he might have thought it was in the campaign capacity.
I think he did think that because he even says, I've been called a surrogate a time or two. In other words, I'm connected to the campaign, and I didn't have any communications. I think he did interpret it that way and even gave that misleading response.
But I think when you go, listen, I've met with the Russian ambassador as part of my official job. I think there's one thought process. Obviously, I do my job. These aren't secret meetings. Meetings don't take place in some dark cubbyhole or in some garage somewhere. They're very public. I mean, so no one's trying to hide a meeting between a U.S. senator and a Russian ambassador or any other ambassador from around the world. And that's why it gives me some pause that he wasn't more clear on the answer. He should have been. And upon reflection, he should have actually gone back and clarified the record if he got the answer wrong in the hearing. Because if you don't, Allison, then you create scenarios and news stories like what we're talking about today. And it doesn't help Donald Trump, and it doesn't help Jeff Sessions, and it doesn't help move the country forward.
Right.
So again, I think we have to have a harder look at what was taking place with regard to Jeff Sessions and the Russians. I would assume there's nothing there, but I think as Lindsey Graham said last night in your town hall, if there is, and the FBI presents us information, I think you'll see the Congress act.
Well, let's talk about that, because what does happen next? There have been calls for Jeff Sessions to resign.
Listen, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, I think she would ask for Donald Trump to resign too and for Donald Trump to be impeached. But again, this is jumping to conclusions. That a U.S. senator on armed services met with a foreign government, that happens all the time, Allison. In the House, a lot of House members on these committees meet with foreign governments all the time.
I hear you, but then they disclose it. And so given that you're saying, let's get to the bottom of it, let's find out the truth, should he recuse himself as the Attorney General overseeing any investigation into the Trump team and Russia's?
I would want more information on that. But again, if there's closer ties or there was information exchanged about the campaign, then I think, that would be appropriate. But if he's only having conversations with the Russians about his official capacity as a U.S. senator, well, then the answer would be no.
So
and again,
you think, just to be clear,
I don't want to jump to. Go ahead.
Well, you think that he is still independent-minded and qualified to oversee these investigations, though he, for whatever reason, didn't disclose his contact?
Yeah, I do at this point. I don't have any information to say, listen, Jeff Sessions won't be someone who can adequately oversee it. Again, a U.S. senator who is on this committee that meets with the foreign government, it happens all the time. So that in and of itself doesn't give me pause. That he wasn't clear in the hearing, that gives me some concern. But as I look at it, Allison, again, they're not meeting in a garage. They're not meeting in some dark space. These are very open meetings that the senator had with the Russians. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know why he wasn't more clear, because this is oftentimes public information. People know these meetings happen.
Right.
And that's why I wish he would have been more clear, or at least clarified his answer.
It does arouse suspicion, but listen to this, Congressman, because it's exactly what you're talking about. Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill just tweeted moments ago, and I'll read it, and you and I will both be hearing it at the same time. I've been on the Armed Services Committee for 10 years. No call or meeting with the Russian ambassador ever, period. Ambassadors call members of the Foreign Relations Committee. So there you have Claire McCaskill saying, actually, it's unusual that Jeff Sessions, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, would be having this meeting with this Russian ambassador.
Well, I would say as a House member, I know that those individuals on these committees, whether it's Armed Services or it's the Foreign Relations Committees, oftentimes have meetings with foreign governments. When I was on the Foreign Relations Committee, now that's a different committee, but obviously you see a lot of governments come through and want to talk to you. So that doesn't give me much pause, and frankly, Claire McCaskill, I don't know that she's going to be the best resource for us about those kind of meetings. Having served on that committee, I'd like to see other senators give
why not? I mean,
commentary.
since she is on that committee, why wouldn't she be the best resource?
Well, Allison, I think you're seeing politics being played hard here. I mean, even if you go back to the speech a couple nights ago, I think most Americans look at the Donald Trump's address to the nation and go, you know what, the content and the delivery was pretty good, but there's a lot of Democrats who go, I just don't like the guy. Personally, he's an affront to my person. And so I hope that this isn't becoming, partisan and political and a dislike for Donald Trump, as why Claire McCaskill is saying it. So let's take Claire's tweet for what it is, but I'd like to hear from other senators to go, if every senator on that committee or those who have served on the committee say, listen, you never hear from a foreign government, well, that would give me pause, but I just don't think that's the case.
So just to wrap this up, you do not think it's time yet for Attorney General Sessions to recuse himself?
That's right. Now, am I saying that there wouldn't be additional information that came out in the future that would give me pause and go, yeah, he shouldn't be part of any investigation? That's possible if new information came to light. But again, this information about this meeting that wasn't discussed with a panel in his confirmation hearing, but was very public, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, Congressman Sean Duffy, great to see you. Thanks so much for being
thanks, Allison.
on
Have a good day.
Coming up on New Day.